Alright, good morning. Hello, my name is Jon Witt and this is a handstand prep class. Thanks for joining me today. If you're new to the class, take stuff out if you need to. You don't have to do everything. The class is to help build up a better foundation so that you understand how to support yourself in learning a handstand. And I say this often, so if you don't necessarily get it, the process will help you be a better practitioner, whether you're a yoga practitioner or you just like to move your body, you like to exercise. Handstand's a great pose to use. I think it's in my opinion, it's better than a headstand. It's actually safer than a headstand. Not that you shouldn't do headstands, but you really have to hold yourself very well in learning, say, like a 10-second free standing handstand, and that's the goal of this class, is to help build up a foundation so you can get that. So if you've been liking these classes, you can like the classes, you can comment about the classes. Any kind of feedback is good for me. I'd like to provide a better service. So if you subscribe, you'll get updated. All these classes that I teach live, they're uploaded on my YouTube channel. So you can subscribe and then you would be notified when these classes are uploaded, and there's other things I'm offering in terms of how to provide a better platform in terms of practice. So you don't need a TheraBand, but I've said this a few weeks ago. I taught a class with the TheraBand. It's a great tool to use in terms of strengthening the shoulders, stretching out the shoulders. If you had a yoga strap, you can do what I'm going to be using today just statically. You just, with the static band or like with a yoga strap, it's a little bit less forgiving, so you got to be a little bit more careful with it. With the TheraBand, you don't have to be as skilled in terms of how you're controlling it, because the band has some give to it. And a lighter band is better. Too strong of a band, you won't be able to provide a fuller range of motion. So I'm just going to start with the band just because I have it, and I'm going to have it, pretty wide here. And I'm just stretching the band apart. So if you're new to using the band or the yoga strap, just hold a static position and you'll feel the strength in the rotators of the shoulders. And this will help you in getting into an overhead position. So I'm just gonna bring the arms in, I'm gonna stretch it out, and just for a few seconds, I'm pulling it apart. So common people, they don't apply enough pressure out. Like, it's hard, right? It's hard to straighten the arms for some people, to take the arms out. So work with it, use some effort here, and the stronger the shoulders are, the safer you'll be when you're overhead in these positions. Just a good warm up as well. So I'm stretching it apart, again, 3-5 seconds, and then I'm bringing it in. And I'm just, again, what I'm feeling for is what actually needs to apply more strength. So for me, I have to use a little bit more effort in my left shoulder. So I'm bringing it in, just gonna do a few more. Back in, and then back out. One more time in, and then one more time out. And I'm going to hold this position out, and then I'm bringing it back in. So I'm going to use the band again, but this is more for range of motion in the shoulder. I'm not going to do a lot of these, but if you can't take the arm fully overhead, this is something that can help you. So I'm taking the band up into a wide position. So if that's all the flexibility you have, that's a good starting point. But I'm going to bring the band back behind my head. This is a good position as well. And then taking the band further back. So if I can take the band or the yoga strap into a full range of motion, great. It's not necessarily better. If what I think is better for people is really work on the angles that are deficient. So this could be a really good angle for you. It doesn't have to be what we call in yoga or gymnastics, right? They're called dislocates. So like I said, with a yoga strap, you gotta be really careful with this. If you're using a stick or a PVC pipe, you gotta be careful in terms of, because you might not be able to have a full range. With a TheraBand, it's much more forgiving. So I'm just gonna take the band up overhead, just for a few breaths. I'm pushing down through my feet, trying to use my legs. And in handstands, you want to be more in a posterior tilt. So just think the tailbone's moving down, the ribs are moving in, and then I'm going to take the band forward and I'm going to bring it down. I'll do some stuff later in the class with the band. So come down onto your hands and your knees. have the hands just underneath the shoulders and push through the hands and protract the shoulders. So my hands are slightly turned out. This is very good for beginners, people with problematic hands or wrists. This is probably better for you. And then let the chest move down in between the arms, and then push through the hands and widen the shoulder blades. You're going to keep that, and we'll lift up into plank. So I'm like I said before about the posterior tilt, is I'm purposely bringing my pelvis into a tuck position. So it may look like I'm rounding, and if you are, it's okay. After a while, you may not need to apply so much of this pulling in. But I'm moving the weight around a little bit just to adjust the hands, the wrists, and then I'm going to come down on the hands, and I'm going to come down on the wrist or the knees. I'm going to bring my hands back towards my knees, and this simulates, your handstand. So if your hands can't turn all the way back, what you could do is you could turn them some of the way, and then over time you can get the hands to turn back more fully. But I'm moving the weight around, I'm moving it back, and when I'm doing this type of work, I'm really just seeing what needs to be adjusted. If you do X amount of reps, whatever, it's good because it'll keep you from not doing it. That's the beauty of having something that's designed for yourself. So as I'm moving in space, I'm just moving side to side again to adjust the wrists, the shoulders. Now I'm going to turn the hands back, so my hands are turned in this position. So it's almost like I'm holding, think that you're holding water in your hands. And then as you're here, I'm pushing through the hands. And same thing, I'm going to apply a little bit of pressure to my hands, my wrists. I'm going to rock back a little bit. And this is going to add more of a stretch through the forearm and through the wrist, right? Just to create some more space. And I often say this, the more you do handstands, you should obviously do this type of work, but your wrists are going to get really strong, and your wrists will get more flexible in the process of practicing handstands. So your hands will feel really great after a while. Some people do have challenges, it's not all, some people really struggle with these things, but you got to kind of know what your boundaries are. So I'm going to turn my hands in, and as I turn my hands in, I'm rocking back and I'm rocking forward. So moving back in space, and feel free to move at any time. If I hold something too long for you, you should move. When I teach people, when I'm in the same room with people, I'm constantly saying that. No one should really look the same. Whether it's flexibility training or strength training, you could be doing the same exercises, but the rep count would be different. The duration is different. So I'm going to turn the hands forward. I'm going to lift back up into plank and pushing through the hands. And in some ways, and I say this often, plank is in some ways a little bit more difficult. Like in terms of strength, if I'm on the tops of the feet, right, I'm here, in some ways, when you get really good in your handstand, plank is actually more difficult. So just something that over time you'll kind of see as far as how you practice. So I'm going to work a little bit on bent arm strength, not a lot, but I've said this before, as you work more on getting stronger in how you push, you'll find that it's going to be easier to be in the straight arm positions. Again, I'm not going to do it in terms of conditioning. I might do that later in the class, but it's really just to know how much to push, because you really have to push more when you're doing bent arm strength to transition, right? So I'm going to come up into a down dog, and then in down dog, I'm paddling the legs out, right? If I need to, you have good flexibility. Your legs could be straight. Obviously, we want our arms to be straight, pushing through the hands and getting a good rotation through the arms. Just think you're in the handstand. When you're practicing handstand in your yoga, think ribs are moving in. I'm going to come forward and through into a couple back bends. So keep the arms straight, move through your arms just to adjust the body. Lift through the sternum, lift through the collarbone, and pull it back up into a down dog. And like I said, say you're like, this back bend's great. you just hold it longer. Come forward, come through. But if you did have a lot of stiffness in the shoulders and the upper body, back bending will really help with handstands. And the handstands will help your back bending. So go back up into a down dog. Go all the way back up. And then we're going to come down on my knees, and I'm going to sit back on my heels. So before I get into I'm going to do some pike presses. I'll do a couple negatives, and then I'll do some actual push-ups with it. But like I said, you're going to have to use more strength. I'm going to untuck the toes and sit back on the feet. So on top of doing handstands in this class, I work on some lower body mobility, which I think is really, really important for just longevity and just getting your body some balance. You know, if you're just doing handstands, you know, that's a great practice. But it's also good to be really strong and pliable through the lower body. So in the pike handstand, it's a little, or the pike push-ups, it's a little bit smaller or shorter of a stance. So when I'm here, just protract through the shoulders, right? Keep that. And then when we come down, right, you want to keep the elbows into the body. So I'm going to do a negative first. So if you wanted to watch, obviously you could just watch it. So I'm just in the short stance. And then what I'm doing is I'm going to come forward with my chest, with my head. Elbows in, and then bringing my knees down, and then going back. So that's a really good way of building strength. So you might not have the ability to push all the way back, and that's okay. But you can get really strong in that way. And then, like I said, when we get into the pushing aspect of a handstand, should be easier, right? So take it up into a down dog, short down dog. Come forward, and as I'm coming forward, right, I'm going to keep the elbows in and push quite strong. Not that you have to push fast, but you could, right? If you're trying to generate more power, you know, speed is part of power, right? So I'm going to come forward. I'm just going to do one more. Slow, 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 slow. And then pushing back up if I can. And then I'm going to walk forward with my feet. So I'm just going to hang forward a bit. I'm going to take my hands to one side. I'm going to take my hands to the other side. I'm going to roll myself up to a standing position. I'm going to bring my chin into my chest, rounding in any particular part of my back that's tight. Like this is a tight area for me for today. I would hold this longer if I was just practicing on my own. But I'm going to come all the way forward. So I'm purposely having my hands off the mat. And then I'm going to curl, curl, curl up. So I'm bringing my chin to my chest. And then as I'm here, like I said, this is great. This is a lot like plow. Then I'm going to come over to the right side. I'm changing the angle. And then I'm going to do the same thing, but on an angle. So I'm here. It's really, really good. Bringing myself up. I'm bringing my chin into my chest. Rounding, rounding, rounding to the back. And then I'm down, and then I'm going to go to the left side. Then I'm up off the floor. You know, just to stretch out your back a little bit more. Bringing yourself up. Slow, 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 slow. Back up. It could be a back bend from this, just to keep the time, right? Bringing the chin into the chest. Rounding. Like, again, this is a great angle right here. It's something that I would explore more for today. But again, I'm just coming down. I'm coming back into the middle. I'm going to slowly roll back up into a standing position. And then I'm up. So what I'm going to do is work a little bit on the pelvis. So just bring the tailbone down. And then stick it out. Bring it down again. Stick it out. I know these look strange, but in your handstand, you're going to want to keep the ribs in. So, you know, pushing down through the feet, tucking the tailbone down and in. Right? And then with that, I'm going to keep the tailbone down. I'm going to round my back. And then I'm coming down with my hands. So step back into a down dog and paddle the legs out. And just see when you transfer the weight from one hand to one foot. So it's like ipsilateral, right? Same side, same hand and foot. Is what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk back towards my feet. So I'm walking back, right? Walking forward.
walking back. Right? Simple, but very good, right? Walking forward with the hands. And then walking back one last time. And just to give you a little bit of variety, I'm going to walk my feet forward and my hands. Same hand, same foot. 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 Backwards. Transfer the weight. And then walking forward one last time. And then as you're walking forward, push really strong through the hands. Make the front of your body stronger, smaller. And then slowly come down. And say your slow descent isn't as slow as mine. That's okay. So when you're down, still stay away from the floor. So I'm just above the ground. And then I'm down. So I'm going to use my strap again. Much easier not to use the strap so you don't have to, but just to practice the body line, because this is what we're going to do when we walk up the wall, is that you want to keep the front of your body in, and you want to get your abdomen in, and you want to get your glutes involved. So I'm not going to be here that long, probably about 30 seconds. As you build up more conditioning, it could be longer, it could be sets, but I'm coming down, and then just so that you have the strap or the band, have it out in front of you. But just so that you know this, is that I'm going to keep my head up just to teach it so you can hear, is that I'm bringing my ribs in and my tailbone down. When I'm doing this, my head is down just as if I was in a handstand, right? But I'm actively trying to keep my body, my front of my body, away from the floor. And this is, the better this is, the easier your handstand will be, or the more efficient it will be, right? So you could just have your head down and just working this. It's very good for your back as well. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the strap forward, and I'm going to take it about the width of my shoulders. And then here, I could just keep my arms down and just pull it apart a little bit, which is good, right? But what I want to do is I'm going to take my arms off the floor. Feet are together, tailbone's down and in, ribs are in. Right, pull the band apart. Take 5 more breaths. And then bringing it down, and then coming up into a Sphinx pose. So be up on your forearms, feet could be separated. But just kind of feel with back bending, if your feet are together, if it helps you more, that's typically going to bring you more polarity in terms of stretching the body. So I'm going to do a little bit of Cobra. I'm going to come up on my hands. I'm going to come lifting through the chest and staying up, right? Try to use more of the strength of your back, and of course use your hands, right? I'm going to come forward and down. Ribs are coming down. And then I'm going to come up, lifting myself up, keeping my hips down, purposely keeping my hips down. But depending on the person, right, might actually be healthier to have the hips up. So it really depends on your back. So keep the front of your body lifting, extending. Slowly bring yourself down, right? Press through the hands. So just push into the floor. So for those of you that can't do push-ups, connect into your shoulders, makes a big difference. Be on the tops of your feet if you'd like, or the toes. It's easier to be on the toes. I'm going to press up to the height of my elbows, right? And then push straight up to the top of my plank. So push. And then come back down on the knees. And just a couple more times, I'm going to stretch up the hands, the wrists. So turn the hands back towards the knees. Move the weight around. Again, some people really need more of this, and that's why there's some practices I'll use more. Some people that do a lot of push-ups, or they find this irritating in the hands, I'll do less, right? But it's a good thing. So now the backs of the hands are in the floor. I'm moving my weight back in space, and then I'm going to just have my toes tucked again. I'm going to take the arms to a cactus position. So in terms of your shoulders,
So when you're here, you're trying to get your shoulders up towards your ears in the handstand. And in yoga, right, it's often taught like shoulders down, which is going to make it much harder to do. So when you're first learning your handstand, push and elevate the scapula, right? And this is more of like the gymnastic way of doing it. And, you know, a gymnast is going to have a better handstand than a yoga practitioner often. So I would use more of a gymnastic style if you're really wanting serious results from your handstand. So keep your ribs in, then take the arms back to cactus, and then you can bring the arms down. So try to remember that the front body's in, shoulders up towards the ears. And what we're going to do is we'll do a wall walk. So walking up the wall, chest to the wall. In my opinion, I say this every class, right? It's probably the number one exercise in terms of handstands and building strength and conditioning. And then on top of it, it's going to get you, a better line. You kick up at the wall with your back at the wall. It's not a bad thing to do. I use it in this class. I don't use it a whole lot personally in my own practice, but it's a good way to get you up. It's a very good way of getting you up, but it's very difficult to get a better line. So I'm going to bring my hands down. When you're first walking to the wall, when you're like, that's as far as I can go, that's as far as you go. You don't have to walk all the way in. I wish it was just that easy. Just walk back in, gut it out, do all that you can. It's really not that simple. You'll have to, build it up, slowly build it up over time. And maybe you're only doing it once, right? So an L position is a good position too. So often in classes, if you've taken them before, an L position is a great hold to hold. That's what you could do. But when we were transferring the weight earlier in class, that's what you're doing up against the wall. So I'm not going to hold it at the wall. It's much harder to do. What I'm going to do is I'm going to walk to the wall, walk back out. And we'll do that about 3, maybe 5 times. Think hands out, much easier on your wrists. So if you're an avid yoga practitioner, calisthenics, whatever, you like being on your hands, get in the practice of turning your hands more often. It's much easier in the hands. In the handstands, you're aiming your index fingers forward, right? So I'm having my hands turned forward. I'm rounding through the shoulders. I'm lifting one leg up the wall, transferring the weight, right? As I'm transferring the weight, I'm bringing my chest. I don't necessarily want it at the wall, even though it's called chest to wall, right? I don't want to touch the wall with my chest. So then I'm going to walk back out, right? And then I'm going to bring my legs down for a moment. I'm going to walk back up. So walking back up to the wall. Push really hard through the hands. Then walk back out. Bring your feet down. Be in a forward bend the whole time. If you need it, take one leg up. Walk back up. Walk back out. Take a moment, walk back up. Now if your chest is touching the wall, bring it away from the wall. Bring it back out. And be in a forward bend or a squat. So again, it's like just that, could be, a little bit of warm up, that, and you could be really, really tired from that. So, you could technically work some balance work, right? You could, divide your training into blocks so that it's a little bit more structured. That is a much better way to get it. I stagger things out in this class so that, one, it's safer, and it's hard to kind of just do it like that initially. But if I knew what type of level you were, I'd say, hey, do it X amount, and then I'd see you. So if you sent me videos, then I would view it with you, and I would give you feedback as far as what to do. But some of it is just, you really do have to apply yourself. So come into a standing forward bend, and in a standing forward bend, just bring your hands underneath your feet. Try to get your toes up to your wrist.
And what I'm doing is I'm rotating my arms out a bit. And then as I'm rotating the arms out, it's not to the point of pain. And if you don't have a real measure of pain, and people do, don't go until you actually feel a negative sensation. Just a slight rotation. So I'm rotating, you can see with my wristwatch. My wristwatch is moving a little bit. So then as I'm moving it out, pushing through my hands, right? And then taking the hands out. I'm going to squat again. As I'm in a squatting position, I'm opening and closing the hands. A crouch is an excellent position. So especially if you got back pain. So you might want to be crouching more than squatting. As your crouch gets better, squatting is an excellent thing to do. So I'm going to be forward with my knees just to stretch out my feet more. And then I'm going to take my knees up. So these can be difficult. You can use blocks. So I'm bringing my legs forward and down and taking the legs up. Hands more forward, more back. Depending on you, you'll find it easier or more difficult. Right? So bring them forward, bring them up. As it gets easier, you can do one leg at a time, right? Something like that, right? I'm going to take the arms forward for balance if I need it. I'm going to lift my bum away from my heels. I'm going to bring myself up to the height of my knees or slightly lower. And then I'm going to bring myself all the way up so that I'm up. So I'm going to take my legs just a little bit wider than my shoulders, and this is more for your knees and your lower body. I'm going to bring my knees slowly, and they don't have to touch, but over time they can, right? So this is considered not good for the knees, but if you do a little bit, it's very good for the knees. You do it 100 times, I'm sure it would be very bad for the knees. But like with rock climbing, you got to turn your knees in and out. My knees feel so good from rock climbing, just turning my legs in and out. And I'm doing that many, many times as I'm climbing. So my knees are pushing out, I'm bringing my knees in, and then I'm taking it out. You always move in the same line, partially why your knee or your back, right? Everything can kind of hurt if it's too repetitive. So I'm going to take my feet out in a wide stance. I'm turning my feet out, and then as I'm turning my feet out, I'm going to take my arms out. My thumbs could be up, just to gauge as far as how much rotation I get in my shoulders. And then sit. You don't have to sit as low as you can, but just for a few seconds, push the legs apart, and then bring yourself up. And do that, about 5 times. I'm pushing the legs apart, tailbones down, and that will target more of the inner thighs. Probably for me, it's one of the tighter areas of my body. So bringing myself up, taking the legs out. And again, you don't have to sit incredibly low, but the more you push out, easier it'll be to sit lower. Not that lower is the be all or the goal, right? It's just something that you can do, right? Pushing the legs apart, driving your legs apart, bringing yourself up, pushing the legs apart, right? Tailbone is down, and then bringing yourself back up into a standing position. So I'm going to practice not so much like kicking, like not kicking up, but I'm going to practice kicking and think of it as more as, if you're kicking up and you're balancing, great, right? That's a great thing to work on. But think of it as more as increasing the range of your hip. So this is hip extension. And then also think of it as strengthening your leg, and that'll help with strengthening you kicking up into position. So how we're going to do it is in a down dog, and try to keep the principles of shoulders up towards the ears, just in case you do kick up, and maybe you are kicking up, right? But I'm going to come down on my hands, and I'm going to press up into a down dog, and then I'm going to kick, like if I'm kicking up for balance, a good thing to kick up, like for you, if you're doing that now, is like 3. I like that count. Each time you kick up, you go up a little bit higher. So if you're learning to kick up, that's a great thing. When you're learning to kick up, if you are,
don't look incredibly far forward. Start by looking at the fingertips, and then as you get better in kicking up, try to look at the heel of the hand, and that'll help you from overly extending the head. It's easier to balance with the head more forward. It's more difficult to balance, but it's a better line. It's not like awful if your line is not good. It's okay, right? So it's something that you can work towards and better. So I'm taking my right leg, I'm keeping it down, and I'm going to swing it up. And then down. So if you're learning to balance, the more you get the weight forward into the hands, the more you get your shoulders over your hands. So it's almost better, rather than down dog, kick up from a plank, more of a position. So I'm going to kick, so I'm bringing this leg up, the left leg. Right. And just getting familiar with kicking the leg up. Like I said, it's very good for strengthening the legs, but will also help in you getting closer and closer to balancing. And we're going to do another round of that. So if you're squatting, planking, all of these things are good to practice if you're not doing the full kick up or the practice of the kick up. So again, try to bring the shoulders over the hands, the wrist. So I'm here. I originally said down dog, but plank is a better way to kick up than down dog. If the shoulders are here, you have to travel forward with the shoulders, and that's why it's a little bit trickier to press up or to kick up, right? It can be done, but it's easier when your shoulders are over your hands. So when your shoulders are over your hands, right, you're here, I'm gonna swing up. Right leg is down, left leg is up. Bring the weight forward into the hands. Grip the fingertips. Just, as you're gripping, swing it up. And, just to, like I've said this before in other classes, is that if it's super rigid and you gotta get up, and it puts a little bit on pressure on yourself, then it's not really, it's okay if you don't just get it. It's a process, right? So come back into a down dog, pull back through the hips, and then as your hips are pulling back, you can pedal through the legs. You can swing forward and through into an up dog, moving through your arms, pulling back up into a down dog. One more time, coming forward, coming through, and then coming back up into a down dog. So walk it forward, just a little bit in the middle, walk it back. Turn so that you're wide, so you will be wide eventually. So just rounding your back like we did earlier in class. Roll yourself up a little bit, come down. Rolling halfway, again, just to expose your back. Bring it to the right, roll halfway, some of the way, bring it down, round your back, purposely rounding your back, right, coming in the middle, and rolling yourself all the way up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my feet out in a wide position, with my legs out wide, right? I'm just going to be moving the weight around a little bit just to open up the hips. So this is, you can have your hands down, of course, right? You feel more comfortable with your hands down, have your hands down, but I'm going to be moving my weight into my right foot, just seeing how much range I actually should apply here. I'm going to move into my left, right? Extending out through the right leg. You can either hug the right leg in or think that it's lifting up and out. I'm going to go to the right side again. Right, maybe the hands are down. It's okay if your heel is up. You can put something underneath your heel. You can move yourself to that one side. Again, if your body's not ready for your heel down and you just force it down, that's when you're going to get hurt. But if you give it some time and you practice it, the heel most likely will get down. For some people, it may never ever get down, right? Your bones might be shaped a certain way. You might not have that type of range in your foot, in your ankle, or in your connective tissues. So, you gotta obviously respect that. So I'm gonna push through my right foot. I'm gonna go to my left, right? My foot's turned in, so it's more adductor. I'm gonna focus more on the hamstring, foot's turned up. Bringing it back into the right again. Push through the heel of the right foot. Bring more weight into the leg that needs to adjust more. So if it's your right leg, keep it in the squat, right, on the right leg. It's more the left leg. You can see how I'm reaching my left arm out to my left leg. I'm gonna bring it out to the left one last time. Again, I could bring it up here. For me, I don't need as much of an adjustment on my right side. I use it, but I don't necessarily need it on this side, but I do need it on my left. And then I'm gonna come back into the middle. And when I come back in the middle, I'm gonna toe heel the feet in. I'm just gonna see where my squat's at, right? So I could be lifting the chest, I could be rounding my back, right? Not like one isn't necessarily better than the other. But one last thing with the band is that I'll just show you in this position is that, like we did earlier, is you can take the band up into an overhead position, you can take it back behind you. But what we're gonna do is do it on the floor. So I'm gonna do it where my head's at the wall, so you won't see my lower body, my legs for some of you. But it's, when you're on the floor, it just adds a different resistance. And then eventually, and maybe you've seen it before, you use a dowel, like a broomstick, and you can use a little bit of weight, and that's also really good to help strengthen the shoulders. And you really don't need a lot of weight, as long as it's adding resistance. More weight looks more impressive, but not necessarily better, right? So when I'm here, it's gonna look like this, but we're gonna be on your belly to do it, right? Find angles that you're tight in, and those will be the best angles to help expose your shoulders. If you're just doing it for I did 30, right? It's just a number. But if you're like, okay, I'm gonna do 10 and really think about it and integrate into it, might actually be better than doing more volume. Come down onto your abdomen, just so that you have room. I don't have room because I have this wall here. So I'm coming down onto my abdomen. And then like we did in the handstand line drill, is that my ribs are in, my feet are together, right? And then I'm gonna bring the arms up and back. But this whole time, I'm trying to keep my ribs away from the floor. Right, bringing it forward, bringing it down, bringing it up, bringing it back. Really reaching out to the arms, bringing it forward. We'll do 3 more. So lift it up, keep the ribs in, taking the arms back. And because the band moves, you don't really have to worry about what's in and what's out. The hands can move. Lift it up, taking it back, bringing it forward, really wide. And last time, bring it up. Take it back to whatever degree. Bring it forward. Bring it down. And then you can move the band and off to the side. So come back up into a plank. So press the hands into the floor wherever you're at. Press yourself up to plank. Back up into a down dog. And you should feel that down dog's a little easier from the band work. All right, so push to the hands. Wherever you feel you need more space in terms of your back, think of that area getting longer, getting wider. And then I'm going to come down and be on my knees. I'm going to sit in a seated position where my legs are forward, and I'm going to be working more of like a tabletop position. So my hands are down, my feet are forward, my hands are turned out, and I'm lifting through the chest. I'm going to lift my hips off the floor, and I'm moving the weight around to adjust the shoulders. The head could be back if you want it, right? The more you keep your hips up, the more you'll adjust your upper back. You know, it's not bad to have the hips down. It's just, it's more specific for the shoulders. And I'll work on the shoulders after this. But I'm going to bring the hips forward, right? If I can, I'm bringing the hips forward. And again, I'm trying to keep my hips up, and then I'm bringing it back. I'm going to do that a few times. So I'm bringing it forward. So lifting the hips, pressing down through the hands, widening your shoulders. Bring it back, original position. Bring it forward. Keep the hips up. And then bring it back. Bring the hips down. So when you sit like this, just let it relax. Pull the shoulders back. And if this is already a stretch for you, just keep your hips here. But if you want more of a stretch in the arms, bring the hips forward towards the feet. And just see. If it's too much of a stretch, you'll feel it immediately in the elbow. So again, for those of you that don't have a really good sense of pain, right, just make it minimal. But if you do have that sensory perception, you can bring the hips forward, all right? And you never really know, to be honest. Never know if it's too much or not. So I like coming into it and then coming out. Not like a really long hold, because if you do it for a really long hold, you come out, you're like, oh man, I did something wrong to my arm, or I did something wrong to my back. So I almost like going into a pose 10, 20 seconds, like going beyond what your body already is capable of, and then coming out. It's less risky, but then you have to apply more repetition, right? So I'm going to come forward again with my hips to adjust my back, to adjust my shoulders, right? And then when I'm here, I'm going to scrunch up my toes, and then I'm going to relax my toes. I'm going to scrunch them up, and then relax. It's not often, but I'll see people on super advanced practices, and their feet are really weak. So it's important to keep your feet strong. And there's many ways you can strengthen your feet. This is just a really simple way of doing it. And it's a good distraction. Relax the toes, scrunch them up one more time, and then let them relax. You're going to pull them back in, bring the hips back here, and then this time what you're going to do is more for your feet. So I'm going to lift my hips, and then I'm going to bring my knees forward. So I'm traveling forward, right? And then you want your heels to be in your bum, right? Very good in adjusting like the lower back in terms of like getting into bridge, getting into wheel, whatever you want to call it. And then I'm bringing my hips back. I'm bringing my hips down. So just be in a cross-legged position. And as you're crossed, just going to take my left hand to my right knee. My right hand's going to be in my chest. I'm twisting through my upper body, but I'm not turning my head. I'm moving only through my thoracic. Only through my thoracic. And then as I'm moving through my thoracic, people think they're twisting and they're really not. So you want to get more of the thoracic to move. And then you could certainly turn the head. But a lot of people, they're just turning their head, and there's really not a lot of manipulation in the thoracic spine. And then you can turn forward. And then some people, they just twist, and then the twist becomes too much of the lower back. So my left hand is at my chest. I'm just turning to that end range of motion, whatever that is for you. And it might not be a lot, right? But you can feel it, and that's the difference. And then as you're in this end range of motion, well, of course you could bring the hand down. Of course you can turn the head. Right? These are good things to do. And then you can turn forward. And then I'm going to just have my arms beside me. So I could use my hands. I can squeeze my legs into the middle. I could push my knees apart. Right? And then I don't teach a relaxation, but you could certainly lie down. You could relax, if that's what you need. I always say that in my public classes that I teach on Zoom. If you need time to rest, you can rest at any time, and that's a great practice to use. But I think what's really important is that you just keep raising your standard of quality of practice, and your practice will develop. And usually it's the opposite. Like, people just do repetitive, and it's too repetitive in the same kind of ways. And that's where you're gonna, you can have some problems with that. I see it a lot in yoga. So embrace more diverse ways of doing things, and you'll be much happier and healthier in your body. So if you'd like to take a Zoom class, I teach Zoom classes on Sundays at 9:30 to 10:30 a.m. I teach it Tuesday mornings. It's a 45-minute class from 7 to 7:45. And that's, a basic class, but it's a good class to take as well. And then I teach a therapeutic class, and that's on Wednesday evenings, and that's from 5 to 6 in the evening, and they're all Eastern times. I'm on the East Coast. So if you have any questions, reach out to me anytime. Leave comments, subscribe. It helps get more views in terms of, I'd like to help more people. That's always been my goal ever since I started teaching yoga. Over 20 years ago. So have a beautiful weekend wherever you're at. I hope you're well. I hope you got good weather wherever you're at. And hopefully I'll see you soon in class. Namaste.